Hey guys, today as promised I'm going to be giving you my top 3 most effective exercises for enlargement, so stay tuned. Alright guys, and so on one of my last videos I said if we got this video to 250 likes that I would give you my top 3 most effective exercises, and so here we are, and so let's get into it. But before I do this guys, this is my personal list, okay? These are my thoughts. We're here in America. This is, First Amendment right for you to hear like my thoughts, and if you disagree, just tell me why in the comments. I just appreciate it if you could do so in a fairly cordial manner at least, and we can agree to disagree on stuff, okay? I don't claim to be some kind of enlargement experts. I know a lot about science. I know a lot about medicine. I have researched this, but ultimately this is based on my experiences, okay? And then the other thing is when we're talking about effective, we need to define effective. And so basically what's going to be most successful in producing the desired result. So just keep that definition in mind. It doesn't mean the fastest. It just means what's going to be ultimately what I feel the most successful, okay? So anybody who knows me, you already know far and above what number 1 is. Number 1 is going to be the pump, okay? This one, high quality air pump with a gauge, and I've been very, very impressed with it. But the reason why I think pumping is king is all around the pound for pound champ is several different reasons. Number 1, there's established science behind it. So here's a review article that talks all about the dynamics of vacuum pumping and why it works. If you haven't seen my video on basically pumping part 1 and pumping part 2, I strongly advise you to check those out because I break down the exact science of the negative pressure, and I also break down why I think it's absolute horse crap that people say that clamping works but pumping doesn't when it's based on similar principles, okay? So it's great for girth, okay? Especially if you get a wider chamber, it allows the chambers of your actual phallus to fill up and expand, and so you get more girth. It also is extending the phallus in a distal position so you can gain more length, and then specifically you can actually target length by using a more narrow cylinder. You can have massive flaccid changes, and so my flaccid size literally has doubled in size, okay? And I think that is largely from as a result of pumping. So you can have huge flaccid gains. There's also established literature, like I said in this paper, you really should read about it, but it can actually, by drawing that healthy blood flow into your actual phallus, you can actually have improved erection quality. You can also see changes pretty quickly. No, it's not permanent changes, but within about a week of pumping, you should notice that your junk is bigger, even if it's just immediately after the pump. Just immediately afterwards, you'll notice it's bigger, and you're gonna be like, whoa, this is awesome. I mean, because at least in my mind, I never knew there was anything that would actually make it bigger. And so you finish your pumping session, you look down and it's bigger and you're like, wow. But once again, you have to be aware that the temporary changes versus the permanent changes, it does take a while for the changes to become permanent. How long is a while, Hink? I would probably say 8 to 12 weeks before you really notice that it's just consistently bigger, even if you don't pump, okay? There are little caveats. I think you have to do it correctly. For example, I think you have to go and erect eventually once you build up to it in order to extend and dilate those chambers past their normal tolerance and actually get permanent gains, okay? So you do have to do it correctly. But just pound for pound, I think it's very, very safe as long as you don't use a bath mate and just smash that water out and pump too quickly. I think that it's incredibly effective, especially with both short-term and long-term and erect and flaccid and general erection quality. Hands down, I mean, the best thing to do in my personal opinion, guys. This is my list. So what would be number 2, okay? A lot of you probably think I'm going to say manual stretches. No, I'm actually going to say an extender, okay? But, I don't even have an extender here to show you. So why am I saying an extender? Well, extender has the most data behind it. So here's one paper here, and here's one paper here that clearly shows that with the consistent use of an extender, your chances of gaining permanent increases in both flaccid, stretch flaccid, and erect length are going to increase. The other important piece of this, guys, is that if you are sidelined with an injury, you are not going to gain. And so that's why I said pumping, and that's also why I'm saying extending, because I think extending is in general very, very safe, especially when done correctly. Once again, there's a couple of caveats. Number 1, you want to avoid a noose extender at all costs, and so that's when you actually have a silicone strap and you just strap down around the glands or the top of the of your phallus. You want to avoid doing that. If you are using something like a vacuum extender or a vacuum cap, there is an increased risk of blisters, but that's kind of a superficial injury. That's not like a major injury, and so just be careful with that. And it does take a little bit more time, and so you have to be more consistent with it. And normally, at least in these extender studies, it's actually somewhere between 4 to as many as 8 hours in a day. But it absolutely does work. If you use an extender and you use it the correct way for the correct amount of time, you will get bigger, period, at the end. That's why I would probably say extenders are number 2, okay? So what would be number 3? This might surprise you guys, but I actually think hanging is number 3. That being said, like the thought of like strapping something up to my D and then like literally hanging weights off of it, it does inherently make me like cringe a little bit. Another important caveat, guys, I've never hung like anything outside of like, if you count me using like a manual stretch and like hanging the weight of my arm down, I've never done any kind of hanging. But that being said, in general, I think it's safe. Once again, if you're using a vacuum cap to hang, then you're at risk of a blister. But in general, I can't say I have come across a single person that has injured themselves from hanging. I don't know whether it's just because maybe less people do it or what the case may be, but I can say that honestly. I don't know anybody that has injured themselves, or at least that has contacted me for injury help from hanging. I think the key thing is really just tension, okay? And especially that time under tension. Hanging is one of those things, as long as you do it correctly, you're not putting too much pressure around the glands or around the nerves. You literally just set it up, hang weight on there, do your set, and you're done. The important thing is it's static. It's a static stretch. And so like even with manual stretches, like you pull and then you relax. And then you pull again and then you relax. But there is a more dynamic interchange rather than like with an extender or hanging, you just kind of set it and just leave it. And so it can be safer in that regard. And I think ultimately, it will get you the results you need. And, maybe you'll have to go up in weight or maybe you have to go down in weight. And I know that BD has talked about different things and, so has, Ben from Mail Hanger about like, intervals where you can like, use the tension and then relieve the tension and then use it again. But, overall, I think it's a very safe and a very effective exercise. So those would be my top 3. Pumping, number 1, extending and hanging, probably tied, neck and neck, whatever, for top 3. So what's missing from this manual exercises? Well, Hank, you made a whole video about how you love manual stretches. Why aren't you including manuals? I don't know whether it's just like more guys are doing it because it doesn't involve devices, but guys, I'm getting more and more people that are injuring themselves hanging. Personally, I mean, not hanging, with manuals. I don't really know why. I mean, I guess I get it. You don't really know what you're doing. You grab down, you pull too hard, you don't realize the force with which you're pulling, and then, boom, you have an injury. Once again, there's that dynamic component. And so I guess that's what it is. Like, to me, it seems kind of foolproof, but obviously it's not, because I have guys and I have seen on these on these, different Reddit forums, like guys that have injured themselves by doing manual stretches. And so because I don't know whether, once again, it doesn't involve a device, so anybody can do it, so more people are doing it or what it might be, but I do think that there's more room for injury. There's more room to do it incorrectly. And then also, like, you don't really know how much force you're pulling with. And so, you're doing your manual stretches and maybe you're pulling too lightly and therefore you don't get results. And so for some people, it might take longer for them to figure out, okay, what's the exact pressure, what's the exact hold, like what do I need to actually do to get those benefits. And so for that reason, I don't think might be as effective as using an extender or weight when you know what you're doing, okay? Then of course, like clamping, I'm never going to include clamping, guys. Like, soft clamping is kind of different, but in general, I think clamping, is more dangerous. And I also think clamping has much more of a learning curve. I don't think I'm a very dumb person, and I scoured these forums and I read and I read and I read as much as I could, and I still injured myself. My most severe injury ever came from clamping, okay? That's me, that's my experience. Don't let that dissuade you if that's what you want to try to do. And, admittedly, I was doing it wrong, but once again, I think there's a lot more room for error when you do it that way. Those are the things that are kind of noticeably absent from my top 3. So there you have it, guys. Pumping, hanging, and extending are going to be my top 3 most effective exercises in my personal opinion. Let me know what you think, guys. Am I way off on this? Is there something huge that I'm missing? Let me know what your top 3 is. If you need to reach me, my Patreon, DocHink. LeviathanSups.com for our Leviathan wellness products. It's also on Amazon. I just appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate all the support. Please like and subscribe. Watch one of my next videos, and I'll catch you on the next one, guys. Peace and love.